national conveners and the government to implement at the national level. These 6 key areas are to incorporate food systems in the national policies, establishing national food system governance mechanisms, invest in data innovation and technology, and deepening inclusive platforms for food systems, as well as promoting increased participation of the private sectors and accountability mechanisms, and ensure access to concessional finance. Today, we have in our opening session a panel of 3 persons. Mr. Dimitri Marzian, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, Ms. Sylvia Ekra, Deputy Director of the United Nations Food Systems Hub, and Mr. Gundu Dailar, Director of Country Support and Partnership in WHO, speaking on behalf of the Issue-Based Coalition. It's my pleasure to invite Mr. Dimitri Marzian to deliver his speech. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Khalid. Good morning, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to reach you on behalf of the Issue-Based Coalition and on behalf of UNECE, UN Economic Commission for Europe. We are looking at the really important nexus of food systems and climate change this morning. This is a topic that's come into the attention of the Coordination Hub, is the core of the discussion, I would say, if we're serious about it. This is a topic that got a real boost in COP28 in Dubai. And we hope that today we can discuss the follow-up to the Emirates Declaration that was adopted in December last year, integrating agriculture and food systems into national adaptation plans, NDCs, and other long-term strategies. I'm even surprised we still need to be talking about this as a to-do action. Frankly, the climate impact of agriculture is not just recognized, it's obvious. The profound effects it can have on how the economies functions are clear. And I think there is a growing recognition within the UN system, triggered by the Food System Summit and the review meeting last year, that the UN has to change the way it also looks at this issue, including at the country level. Yesterday, I had a chance to interact with all the UN resident coordinators from this region on climate change issues. I was honored to be asked to speak to them along with IPCC on what can be done to boost the ability of UN country teams to support governments on climate action on the ground. And several of them raised the issue of agriculture. And what struck me most is that, unfortunately, the silos between those who are responsible for climate water and those who are responsible for agriculture persist. Moreover, what lacks is the discussion on the transformation of the economic models of countries. For example, the discussion on circular economy, which is central to what we're discussing today, transforming food systems so they can become much more, well, first of all, resilient to climate, but also reduce the emissions. The discussion on circular economy is further siloed out in a conversation that often is still marginal, at least in the countries of the region, but I would probably dare say in many places around the world. So my message today is very simple. Given the sheer role of food systems in greenhouse gas emissions, given the fact how much water is being used by agriculture, given the pollution effect, so the clear linkages between food systems and the triple planetary crisis, and the potential that circular models and other innovative solutions hold to reduce waste, to rethink the way we consume, and to also nurture the kind of behaviorship that we need for the planet as a whole. Because a lot of things start with how we eat, but also how we package and how we dispose. We need to join forces, support the UN country teams, and this issue-based coalition is doing this. I hope that today's event can formulate some very specific calls for action, but also very specific lines of support we can provide to the UN resident coordinators. From UNECE side, we stay very committed to be part of the coalition, to be contributing with our normative and policy tools that are being developed within several divisions of UNECE, be trade, where we talk about agricultural quality standards, food loss and waste reduction standards and trade facilitation, as well as traceability and circularity, or from the environmental side, where we talk about environmental monitoring and assessment, the work on water and climate, and the work on sustainable nitrogen management. With this, Ali, let me pass it back to you and express hope that today is a practical and focused discussion on some of these issues.
Thank you so much, Masari, and thanks also for focusing on the role of the UN system and UN country teams in supporting work and convergence between food systems and the climate action. Now it's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Mundu Tyler from WHO to provide his introductory remarks. Over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants, distinguished guests, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's my honor to address you as co-chair of the UN-based Coalition on Sustainable Food Systems for the Europe and Central Asia region. This IBC was established in 2020 to support the UNRCs and UN country teams in their advocacy, policy and technical engagement for sustainable food systems transformation in countries. As an institutional mechanism of the regional collaboration platform, the IBC brings together a breadth of expertise from across the UN, with the co-chairs being FAO, WHO, UNICEF, and we've got another 7 sister agencies participating in the IBC. Today we gather here recognizing the critical intersection between sustainable food systems and the urgent need for climate action. The UN Food Systems Summit +2 Stocktaking Moment that was just mentioned marked indeed a pivotal juncture, providing us with a unique opportunity to harness the potential of sustainable, inclusive, nutritious and resilient food systems to advance the SDGs. Our meeting today is a testament to the interconnectedness between the food systems transformation and climate action. The summit's call to action was clear and loud. It encourages leaders to integrate food system strategies into national policies, aligning them with climate action and nature preservation. Food systems transformation and resilience are closely linked to the One Health approach, which addresses the health of people, animals, plants, and their shared environment in a holistic and systematic manner. The regional meeting of national food systems conveners in Europe and Central Asia that we held yesterday highlighted again the interrelation of challenges and underscored the importance of a holistic approach combining crisis response, midterm development needs, and long-term structural changes to build resilience and improve sustainability. Also yesterday, we heard many good practices from national conveners on food systems transformation, including work already started on integrating the objectives of food systems and climate change in their national strategies and priorities. The issue-based coalition on sustainable food systems in Europe and Central Asia can play a vital role in driving transformative change in shaping the future of our food systems in the face of climate challenges, in close collaboration with the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub. By integrating perspectives and expertise from different agencies, we leverage a wealth of knowledge and resources. We enrich our understanding of the challenges at hand, and we can craft well-rounded solutions for UN country teams and UN resident coordinators. First and foremost, the IBC serves as a beacon of collaboration, bringing together diverse UN agencies and within the country teams. The challenge before us is complex and interconnected, touching upon issues of food security, climate change, biodiversity preservation, health and sustainable diets, and sustainable development, to cite quite a few. By uniting under a common umbrella, the IBC enables comprehensive and synergistic approaches to addressing these issues in an interconnected way. In the realm of policy and strategy, the IBC can also be instrumental to act as a unifying force, aligning national, regional, and sub-regional priorities with global initiatives. In this spirit, let me thank you all for your commitment to sustainable food systems, and I wish us all a productive and insightful event ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tyler. Thanks also for the support from the IBC in the preparation for this event and the follow-up to the outcomes of the Stocktaking Moment. Now it's my great pleasure to invite Ms. Sylvia Eckert, Deputy Director, United Nations Hub, to provide us with information on the outcomes of the Stocktaking Moment, COP28, and the way forward.
Thank you very much, Khaled. And it is a great pleasure for me to be here this morning and to join the speakers before me in welcoming you all very warmly. I think we are very lucky in this region to have some very strong UN regional assets. We just heard the Europe IBC, the issue-based coalition, has been the first regional IBC on food systems to be created. Very strong, very engaged, and working in an integrated manner. And we also saw yesterday the very important reports and the knowledge that we get from the Commission. So thank you very much to both of you for the support. And at the Hub, we are looking forward to working together in an even tighter partnership in starting preparing for Stocktaking Moment +4 in 2025. The reason why we're here today and really building on an excellent meeting yesterday with 15 national conveners from the region, many of them are again with us in the room this morning, is to continue to unpack what came out of Stocktaking Moment last July in Rome. And I think yesterday, the meeting was really amazing in telling us a story of continued progress. What we got from the updates from the national conveners is dedication, commitment, clarity also on the challenges. I think it is not an easy path that is laid in front of us, which is the reason why we really have to come together. So my role here this morning is to, as I said, go a little bit more into the details of what came out of the Stocktaking Moment, what came out of COP28 as well, which was really a defining moment for all of us working on climate and food systems, and say a little bit about the way forward. So first, on the Stocktaking Moment, I think Khaled already gave you the numbers, and I think it's important to take a moment to reflect on those numbers because they're also sending a signal. We had a very strong participation, 3,300 participants from all over the globe. Strong participation of heads of states. We had 21 heads of states and government on this occasion. 182 countries were represented, 50 from this region, plus the European Union, and 126 ministers. We had the president of Armenia, the prime minister of Montenegro, and some EU commissioners. And I think that in itself is a statement of the importance and the recognition of the centrality of food systems for sustainable development. We would love to take credit for this level of participation, but no, it's just testament of the place that food system has on the global community's radar. So that's very important, and that's a way that we have to continue to surf on. Second, in terms of outcome, is the Secretary General's call to action that was issued at the end of the Stocktaking Moment on the last day, read by the DSG herself. And I think Khaled already mentioned those 6 points. They're really going to constitute the North Star for us at the Hub, but also for the national conveners, for the food system actors, and for the ecosystem of support. So let me take a couple of minutes to mention why this call to action is big. First, it's giving us 6 areas that are the direction of policy integration and policy coherence. And we all know that when we are trying to work from a systems approach, policy coherence is really the most complicated thing to achieve. Because we have now national pathways in 127 countries. Those national pathways are going to be as useful as they are integrated into the national policy architecture for sustainable development. So what we want to see, and the invitation with that first point, is really to see the national pathways integrated in national development plans and integrated into Agenda 2030 strategy. Second is about inclusive governance. Again, trying to lift a systems-wide agenda can only happen if we have spaces where all the ministries that have a role to play, and here we're talking about health, we're talking about environment, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about planning, finance, gender, and decent work. All these ministers have to have a space where they sit around the same table to discuss food systems in an integrated way. But beyond the interministerial aspect, we also need to have all the stakeholders around the table. And many countries we have seen are putting in place those governance platforms. This is really important so that the producers, the women's groups, the youth groups, the indigenous people, the private sector can be part of the conversation. Third point is about leveraging science, technology, and innovation. We still have a gap in the science policy interface. What we see is that we are producing a lot of science, that the uptake by decision makers is still too weak. This is something that we need to reinforce. How do we make sure that we are putting science at the heart of the implementation of the national pathways in very concrete ways? Fourth is about the engagement of the private sector. I think the private sector is playing an important role in the challenges that we see with food systems. They can also be part of the solution. But that means sitting around the same table and understanding each other. And also having greater accountability from the private sector. And I think that is going to be one of the priorities for the hub in the next biennium, is to work with other partners such as GAIN, such as the World Benchmarking Alliance, to really look at what does accountability look like for the private sector. Yesterday, we were hearing about the malnutrition and the impact of unhealthy diets. We can only solve this working stronger with the private sector. Fifth is about inclusive implementation. I think what we have seen is that consultations are going very strong in the countries, but implementation is not as inclusive as it should be. And this is really where action plans that are being developed to implement the national pathways, but also governance structures and accountability frameworks, but also monitoring has to include all the stakeholders and not just it's a whole of government, but also whole of society affair that we are trying to put together here. And it has to be materialized. And last but not least, it's of course finance. How do we make sure that in a context where fiscal space is getting tighter and tighter for many countries? Last week, we were in the Arab region having the same conversation, and the debt situation is making it impossible for countries to really find the breath of fresh air that they need to be able to inject funding and financing into the food systems transformation vision. So IFAD and the World Bank leading this agenda in partnership with the hub, and really looking forward to materializing great strides on finance. So these are the 6 key points. Beyond that, in the Secretary General's call to action, we also have climate action that was really clearly prioritized by the SG, and this is the reason why I think we also got the momentum going for the COP28 and for the project, and I will talk about it in a minute. Nutrition, very important. Yesterday, I don't think any of us has forgotten the data that Francesco has given us about the malnutrition situation in this region. One of the primary cause of death and one of the primary risks of premature death. I hope I'm quoting the data correctly, Francesco will correct me later. But nutrition, extremely important. Resilience and vulnerability, extremely important. And also fragility. This is one element. We see that we are having more and more hunger hotspots, more and more fragile countries, and that our food systems are not as resilient as they need to be. Another strong element is about capacity building and evidence making, and we really grateful to ECA for all the work that they're doing in this area. Coherence with other processes is really important. This is the reason why we were so strong at COP28. We're already in touch with the COP29 presidency to see how we leverage the partnership with Azerbaijan. So that's leadership in the region that we can all capitalize on. And also already talking about COP30. Nutrition for Growth Summit is going to be another opportunity for us this year to make sure that we are using our global processes to continue with the systems agenda. And then last but certainly not least is coordination. Again, the reason why we're so happy to have a strong IBC here. I think yesterday some of our national conveners were telling us of the challenges that they have on the ground when they are not sure what kind of support they can get from the UN, or when the support from the UN is slow and project-based. And again, as I was saying yesterday, we cannot say that we are accelerating and transforming project-based. It has to change. We have to change this model. It just doesn't work for the countries. A plea also for our development partners here, because this is us for all together we can change this. So on COP28, a really groundbreaking moment for all of us working on food systems, because the presidency gave us an amazing opportunity to put food systems and climate action very strong on the agenda. We had the UAE declaration signed by 159 countries, committing that between now and COP30, they're really going to make the effort to converge their climate action through their NDCs, through their NAPs, and their food systems transformation through their national pathways. So how do we cross-fertilize what is going on in those spaces? My neighbor was saying earlier that they're not necessarily working together in sync, and what we want to change in the next 2 years. I think we have some excellent examples in this region. Yesterday, we heard from Norway, we heard from Switzerland, we heard from Denmark. Many other countries in the region are really taking commitments to bring climate action and food systems together. We also know that we should not do just climate action and food systems, but climate action, food system, biodiversity, nutrition. All these agendas have to be converged together, because the adverse effects are being felt by our farmers already now. The situation is already dramatic in the region, and we need to react. So moving forward, we have now 39 national conveners in this region. We have 26 national pathways. So this is a strong network that needs the support of our regional assets, needs to support our UN country teams, but also has a lot of strengths working together as one. So we are looking forward to being by your side to continue to define what kind of support will be needed for the Convergence Initiative. I don't want to go into too many of these details because we have David and other folks who are going to talk about this later on. But we want that by COP30 in Brazil, we can really show that we are taking care of adaptation needs, mitigation needs from a climate, from a food systems perspective, and that we are making really the national pathways extremely central to all the sustainable work that we are doing. I will stop there, Khaled. Very happy to come back later as needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for unpacking the results of the Stocktaking Moment and COP28. Thanks also for confirming and highlighting that this is unfinished business. We have heard yesterday that many countries in the region are doing a lot of progress in food system transformation. And it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Gerald Kulela, Advisor, Food System Minister of Agriculture and Forestry from Finland, to provide us with the main key points from the meeting of the national conveners yesterday. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. It's my pleasure to convey a message from yesterday's meeting that the Food Systems Coordination Hub and the issue-based coalition organized as a regional meeting for the national conveners from Europe and Central Asia. The meeting included several thematic sessions with very, very interesting and enlightening presentations and remarks by experts and colleague conveners, focusing on progress of food systems transformation and national pathways, convergence on food systems and climate action, the ecosystem of support, and monitoring progress on food systems transformation. The discussions during the day brought forward important messages that could be summarized in the following points. Many countries in Europe and Central Asia are moving fast to upgrade their national pathways following the Food Systems Summit and the Food Systems Stocktaking Moment. It is noted that progress across the regions differs from one sub-region to another. For example, some countries in the region are implementing detailed strategies for food systems transformation, while some others are updating their national pathways using national and subnational multi-stakeholder mechanisms. In many countries, food systems and climate action policies are converging. The level of convergence may be limited in some countries, and it may not cover all relevant aspects of policy areas such as public health, nutrition, or labor. Countries welcomed the Convergence Initiative as an important contribution to accelerate this systemic convergence, leading to results that can support the achievement of the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement. Still, one needs to note that in the present security policy environment, in the tightening economic environment, governments tend to focus on domestic policies, securing domestic production, and risk leaving global climate issues with less attention. Thus, there is a work to be done, sometimes problematic, but in the light of the overall SDG challenges, work that is of utmost importance. Micronutrient deficiencies and obesity, as well as high cost of healthy diets, were identified as some of the main challenges in the region related to food systems. The empowerment of national conveners was identified as a priority. The Food Systems Hub plays a key role in supporting capacity building for national conveners and their interaction with UN resident coordinators, country teams, coalitions, and the overall system of support in response to the country's priorities. There was an interesting discussion on monitoring. One needs to know where we are and where are we going. For decision makers, need to have informed, integrated data to be able to make decisions while taking into consideration synergies and trade-offs. We saw encouraging presentations of monitoring and data collection during the meeting. There is a strong need for multi-stakeholder engagement that involves the private sector, civil society, as well as consumers in the transformation process. The national dialogue process that was initiated by and for the summit meeting has set a model for that dialogue, which is vital for a successful transformation of food systems. Lastly, while this year is a year between the stock-taking moment of last year and stock-taking moment to come next year, it is of importance to keep the community of conveners active and working in order not to lose this extremely valuable instrument to to convey the message of food systems transformation in their countries and across the countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olila, for a very comprehensive and concise summary of the meeting yesterday. This will be very useful in the hub when we prepare the final report of this meeting. Thank you so much. This concludes the opening session. We go directly into the first panel, where we have 5 speakers, Dr. Francesco Planca, Mr. Alvin Kops, and we have online Ms. Lucy Wallace and Ms. Hannah Van Zanta and Ms. Rosemary Kochi. We go directly into the session. I will not reintroduce again the outcomes of the stock-taking moment. Sylvia has spoken at length on this, and the 6 action areas coming from the Secretary General call to action. And I go directly to Dr. Planca to ask you on what would be the most significant outcomes from the stock-taking moment related to health nutrition. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Khaled, and good morning all. What did the stock-taking deliver on health and nutrition? And what is missing that it didn't deliver? I would say that the main outcome is definitely the call to action delivered by the UN Secretary General. And I would say 4 points particularly. It highlights food insecurity and malnutrition as a clear objective. Number 2, it mentions the challenges of nutrition and health. Number 3, it mentions the importance of the link of food system transformation with the environment, really highlighting the win-win of that transformation. It somehow was anticipating what was discussed, and Sylvia mentioned it at COP28, where both the food declaration and the health declaration mentioned the need to have a healthy diet. And particularly the health declaration mentioned clearly the need to have a sustainable healthy diet. And the 4th point, probably most important, is a call to policy review. So that call to action is a call to all member states and all actors to consider what policies and investment they might do for the transformation towards achieving those goals. But of course, the call to action comes because during the stock taking, there were important mentions of good practices and good examples of achievements. I think we can say comfortably that we have front-runner countries. There are front-runner countries in food system transformation that are really embracing the objectives on health and nutrition in their pathways. This is important because they are basically demonstrating that establishing policies on food environment is feasible. We know how to do it. It does not lead to loss of employment in the sector, which is often the argument that is used by some actors to say, well, you can't do that. It's against the WTO. We're going to lose. The economy is going to suffer. That is simply not true. What is missing? What is missing? Well, I must say that probably, and you all were struck as I was by the data on obesity. I think what wasn't clear perhaps, and I'm the first one to take responsibility for not having done probably a good job in flagging that early enough. We haven't really communicated the urgency to act on obesity. I mean, we know about the epidemic of obesity. We've been flagging it since the 1990s, last 30 years, but we haven't seen the incredible impact that it's having, and we haven't seen the speed at which, the rate at which the obesity rates were increasing. This is a massive public health problem. And I don't think that we have been able still to embed it in the policies of food system transformation. You know, that billion people speaks very clearly. And this region, European and Central Asian region, is no exemption. But also probably we haven't, the stock taking wasn't really doing a good job to putting the transformation towards allowing a healthy diet as really a driver of food system transformation. We say health, environment, livelihoods, you know, these are the drivers of food system transformation. But frankly, I'm just being very honest with you, health seems to be an afterthought. It's not the main driver. What are the challenges of Europe and Central Asia? From the health point of view, yeah, the food system is not evolving in the right direction. I mean, we have broadly less than 1 in 10 people consuming a healthy diet in the majority of them. Some countries are doing well, you know, Greece, Turkey, 1 people in 5 is consuming a healthy diet with some parameters. But, you know, most of the region, particularly Eastern Europe, the healthy diet is not something which most people do. And is it a problem of affordability? Yes, partially, because it's true that in Central Asia, only maybe 1/4 of the population can afford a healthy diet. Actually, that doesn't happen in the rest of Europe. I mean, the affordability of healthy diet is there for the majority of the population. And of course, there are some, parts of the population which do not have adequate purchasing power. But that's not a problem of the cost of the diet. That's a problem of the purchasing power of people. So social protection needs to be addressed rather than actually the cost of food. And then the food system is evolving. It's not static. It's not something that, you know, there and we need to address. It's actually evolving. And unfortunately, it is not evolving in the right direction. Just to mention one aspect is the increased consumption of processed and highly processed food. It's actually on the increase. There are some parts of Europe, for example, UK, where 60% of the food is highly processed. You know, some people call it ultra processed because they, you know, particularly would like to highlight the complete unhealthiness of this category of products. So what's the way forward? An urgent policy response, regulating the food environment and nudging commercial actors to do the right thing, curbing the aggressive, pervasive marketing of foods and drinks, particularly to children who cannot protect themselves. Use price tools, taxation and subsidies to make the unhealthy foods less appealing and affordable, and making the healthy food more appealing and affordable. And using the purchasing power of the public system to drive availability and affordability of healthy food. Schools, and we have a wonderful, successful coalition on school food meals, and thanks Finland and France for driving it. But not just schools, all public institutions and cities and social protection system. I think that is an enormous possibility for change. I would say that, you know, overall the good news is that there is leadership. There's leadership in this room, and that is something which we can build on really for the next stock taking. Because as I said yesterday, what we need is scale. We need many countries. We need to have many more countries really implementing some of these policies. At the moment, food environment policies are implemented by minority countries. I mean, we have some of the main policies I mentioned, marketing controls, 24 countries in the world. Taxation of sugar-sweetened beverages, it's a bit more, but you know, how many really implement at the level that is producing an impact on the reduction of the sales? You know, you can count it with the fingers of your hand. So leadership of this region is absolutely critical for this big change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Branca. Thanks also for giving us more information on the nutrition situation in the region, and also with very concrete suggestion on the way forward, urgent policy environment, including for marketing, pricing tools, taxation, and also using the power of the state, the purchasing power of the state to drive people more toward healthy diets. It's also noted that the hub is starting another work stream on corporate accountability, and I believe this will touch on some of these recommendations. Now it's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Albin Kops, Head of International Affairs and Food Security, Federal Office of Agriculture, Switzerland, to provide us with maybe more information on what does the call to action mean to member states. The call to action is addressed to government, but also addressed to civil society and private sector. How Switzerland is reacting to this and involving all stakeholders. Over.
Thank you very much, moderator. It's certainly a great pleasure to give you observations coming from one country on the role of the states and governments. I'm sure views on this will also be as divergent as and different as the number of countries. So I think the Secretary General call for action focuses on 6 main areas for concerted action. Sylvia mentioned them all. I don't have to list them anymore. I think I will focus certainly on policy coherence, inclusivity, participatory design of policy development and implementation. We do observe that many countries are undertaking efforts towards strengthening the coherence between the national policies in relation to food and agriculture and other relevant areas such as sustainable development, health, environment, and action. In Switzerland, we have been increasingly working towards bringing together climate and food in our policy instruments over the past years through a holistic approach that looks at food systems as a whole. This was first reflected in our Sustainable Development Strategy 2030 that was released in 2021. Its dedicated chapter on promoting food systems transformation has 4 measurable targets that are all located at the food systems and climate action nexus. One is increasing to 1/3 the population, the proportion of the Swiss population that nourishes itself in line with our nutritional recommendations. The second objective is halving avoidable food waste. The third is decreasing by 25% the carbon footprint for food consumption compared to 2020. And the fourth is increasing by 1/3 the proportion of farms engaged in specially environment and animal-friendly production systems. Then the story continues. In 2022, the Federal Council, which is the executive branch of Switzerland, presented its vision for the future orientation of Swiss agriculture policy beyond 2030. The vision adopts a holistic approach combining sustainable agriculture production practices with healthier and more environmentally friendly consumption patterns, aiming to generate 2/3 less GHG emissions by 2050 as compared to 2020. In this context, our administration is currently working on a range of measures at the intersection of food systems and climate action to be presented to our Parliament in 2027, including in areas such as food labeling, true cost of food, and the food environment. However, while these efforts are going into the direction that the Secretary General called for, we also have to acknowledge that transformational processes are not just easy and straightforward, but rather, as we witnessed in Europe, difficult and can even lead to open protests. So what does this mean for all of us in Europe and Central Asia, at least? First of all, in order to avoid pushback from farmers and other concerned food system actors, we need to provide them with legal certainty, economic and social perspectives, as well as long-term planning reliability. In addition, we have to do an even better job of bringing on board all relevant stakeholders and proactively involve them through dialogues and other inclusive processes that aim to jointly develop policy solutions. This can allow us to maintain the direction towards which we do have to move, while ensuring that we are also taking everybody along. But we may need to adapt our transformation trajectories to make change feel less abrupt and more predictable to concerned stakeholders. While we are already doing stakeholder consultations processes on a regular basis, there is often a disconnect between these and the regular legislative policy-making process. We may have to find innovative ways to ensure a better link between the two, particularly when food systems transformation may have implications on what and how governments should spend their money on. Legislators have to be involved from an early stage. In terms of effective collaboration, countries can work together to promote policy convergence in relevant global processes. We have seen some recent successes in this regard in the context of the COP28 with the adoption of the Emirates Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems and Climate Action. However, mainstreaming food systems in the global environmental fora remains a challenge, as we noticed during the 6th United Nations Environment Assembly just 2 weeks ago, where most countries' delegations were very reluctant to acknowledge the interlinkages between food systems and the triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. With COP15 of the Convention on Biological Diversity later this year, we will have our next opportunity to try to mainstream food systems into global and environment-related policy processes. Let us effectively collaborate towards this goal. We must continue to maintain the direction towards food system transformation, even in the face of difficulties and challenges. And in doing so, we need to keep in mind that from a country's perspective, our pathways will not end with the SDGs. Our planning horizon has to go beyond 2030. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albert Pops. Thanks for also identifying how Switzerland is using some of the best practices, working together on the two tracks of food systems and climate action, and also for explaining that resistance exists when you would like to make a systemic change and how to deal with it. Thanks a lot. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Lucy Wallace, Chief of Staff of European Institute of Innovation and Technology. The European Institute for Innovation and Technology is supporting countries in supporting innovation at systemic level from education to markets. So maybe you can provide us with some guidance and some information how you work with members to support the implementation system approach. Over to you.
Thank you. The European Institute of Innovation and Technology, EIT, is an independent body of the European Union, and we support innovation at systems level, so from education right through products or initiatives to market. EIT itself funds a number of knowledge innovation communities, of which EIT Food is one of them. And it's the experience of EIT Food that I'll be basing my intervention on today. So regional organisations play a key role in providing insights into policy measures, but also being a vehicle for actioning and implementing these measures and plans. So when we're thinking about how regional organisations and research can better support governments and key stakeholders for food systems transformation, there's actually an awful lot I could talk about, but today there are 3 points I think are worth mentioning in this context. So firstly, a lot of the interventions mentioned so far today require food system stakeholders to work together. But as we know, food systems are highly fragmented and there's a lack of trust between these different actors. They're also inherently complex. And so when put in the context of climate, biodiversity and environment, we add to that complexity. And any intervention that we make, however well intended, will have unintended consequences. This can mean that we end up with a trade-off. And this has already been mentioned today, for instance, between farmer livelihoods and the environment. So we're seeing this across Europe at the moment, but this is also a challenge in other parts of the world. To avoid this, we need to take a holistic approach when it comes to food systems transformation. We also need to build trust. As we know, there's a lack of trust in the food system between stakeholders, as already mentioned. So regional organisations, especially those which are seen as independent, and as I already mentioned, EIT Food is independent from the European Union, although we are funded by the European Union. We're in a position to be able to build trust and play the role of conveners. So develop ways in which we can bring together different food system stakeholders to provide a holistic overview and engage in dialogue and action. And this is of an immense value to governments and multilateral agencies when we're looking at regulatory and policy interventions. So another point I'd like to make is on capacity building, specifically on skills and education. So as our food system evolves into one which is healthy, sustainable and resilient for all, we need to ensure that we've got the right people in the right places at the right time. And this requires us to do a certain amount of workforce planning and skills planning on a rapidly evolving system. So this isn't an easy thing to do. There's an overall need to promote entrepreneurial innovation skills as essential tools for the workforce to tackle the challenges ahead in the transition. But there's also quite a specific need to enhance funding opportunities to deploy upskilling and reskilling initiatives. These might be quite specific, where we see an emerging gap in skills. For instance, some of the skills needed for techniques around protein diversification or precision farming, which are really sort of new skills coming onto the market. Or they might be more general, for instance, digital skills. Providing skills and education which preempt the need in order to be ready requires a certain amount of coordination across different actors. So universities and knowledge institutions, corporates, businesses, startups, farmers, students, etc. And that's going to help us to develop a skilled and innovative workforce that can help lead the way in the sustainable transition. And that's something which governments can promote and provide funding for, but that they require regional organisations to coordinate and implement. So ideally, we need to work together for this to be successful. The third point I'd like to make is on funding and testing approaches. So policy measures provide the framework for what we need to do, or they can provide an overarching plan, but that doesn't always tell us what something looks like or how it works on the ground for all the different food system stakeholders that need to be involved. So we need very context-specific innovation, either in terms of technology or in terms of social innovation for scalability, in order to ensure that the frameworks that we have are actually actionable. So funders like ourselves are able to use a range of different funding mechanisms to either test initiatives and engage in dialogue about the outcomes. And we already do this. We do this quite a lot with the European Commission, or to provide the implementation of this. And we're able to do this across multiple geographies. This means that the solutions that we come up with can be shared more widely and more people can benefit. So I think that we're already doing a lot, but obviously we need to do more and we need to do better. I think we all know this. Fora like today's meeting are incredibly valuable in reminding us what we should be doing, but also providing us with ideas on how we can better collaborate and improve for a better future for all of us. The regional organisations provide a route to implementation and action, but we recognise that we need to speed up and scale up our efforts. Bearing in mind we do not have unlimited resources, any of us, so we need to coordinate our efforts better. Thank you.
System Ecology Group and Wagner University to provide us with some information on the role of researchers and academia in supporting process. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me all well?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So research can support food system actors in many ways, but I would like to focus on the research I'm conducting with my team and how we aim to support the transition of the food system. So my research focuses on the question, how can we redesign the food system as such that we can produce enough healthy food for a growing population within the boundaries of our planet? For this, we developed a detailed biophysical food system optimization model. The model is called the Circular Food System Model, the CFOS model. In our Nature Food publication of last year, we showed the potential of redesigning the food system based on circularity principles. Our research shows that if we redesign the food system based on those circularity principles, we can reduce agricultural land use with around 70% and greenhouse gas emissions with around 30%, while also significantly reducing the use of synthetic fertilizers. So what should we, or I have to say Europeans, need to do for this? First of all, it's important to transition towards a more healthy diet. This also means a more plant-based diet. In our scenarios, we saw a shift from around 60% animal source food and 40% plant-based foods towards 40% animal source food and 60% plant-based foods. Furthermore, it's important that we avoid waste. And with waste, I mean the most obvious things, such as avoiding food waste, but I also mean, for example, overconsumption. If and only if we cannot avoid waste, it's important that we use the waste in the most efficient way. For example, we can feed our animals with all byproducts or other residual streams, or we can use food waste as a fertilizer. This redesign of the food system based on circularity principles also requires changes in our animal production systems and our crop production systems. Overall, we saw a reduction in the number of animals, but also a shift in the type of animal systems. Where we saw a reduction mainly in beef cattle, we saw an increase in, for example, dairy cattle. In terms of crop production systems, we saw mainly more diversity, so more different cropping systems. So how will this help us, or how will this help food system actors to transition the food system? The CFOS model has the ability to quantify food system redesigns and to identify trade-offs among different sustainability indicators from a regional to a global perspective or scale. It will answer questions such as which crops to grow where, which animals to keep and how many animals, and which residual streams can we actually feed them. And how can we optimize the use of organic fertilizers? And what should we eat in a resilient food system that respects human and planetary health? In other words, it helps to identify promising innovations and to direct investments while avoiding trade-offs. The food system can, however, be transformed in many different ways. Together with food system actors, we will develop scenarios and transition pathways with the aim to develop long-term visions on how to transition the food system. We will develop this by playing serious games with food system actors across the globe, in which we account for different shocks to test the resilience of the food system. The co-designed scenarios and transition pathways will then be modeled with the CFOS model, and therefore will provide detailed biophysical information about the potential of the food system transformations that the various food system actors envisioned. To summarize, the research we are doing allow, for example, investors and policymakers to create quantitative long-term visions in co-creation with other food system actors on how to redesign the food system as such that we can respect human and planetary health. If you are interested in our research or you would like to play the serious game with us, please contact me afterwards. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Van Zanten. I think this is very interesting, and not only for the hub, but also for national conveners, the impressive numbers about decreasing land use by 70%, greenhouse gas emission by 30%, and the fertilizers and other inputs, something that I believe many of the national conveners would be interested to know more. Now, our last speaker for this panel is Ms. Rosemary Bocci, Senior Manager of Health and Sustainability at the Consumer Goods Forum. She will tell us more about the role of the private sector in supporting system transformation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here today. And I think it's really important that we also discuss the critical role that the private sector can play in transforming food systems. I've heard a lot of what's been said this morning, and I'm really pleased to hear that a lot of the themes that have been drawn out are similar. We share those themes. So I'll be talking about the power of collaboration, about how partnership and working together is very important in transformation. I'll be talking about how commitments should be driving action and the value of having those commitments, and also about the themes around innovation and implementation. We need to build scale and we need to focus on what works. So a little bit about the Consumer Goods Forum. We unite retailers and manufacturers from across the world. We're a global organisation tackling global challenges. Our board is led by 60 CEOs, and we bring together senior leaders from more than 400 retailers and manufacturers and stakeholders from across 70 countries around the world to tackle some of the biggest global challenges. And we really believe that this combination of leadership and reach makes us a very powerful force for sharing knowledge, for collaboration, and for accelerating tangible progress on some of the really crucial social and environmental issues. And we all share today the knowledge, the understanding that the really vast challenges confronting our food system demand collaboration. We know that no single entity, no company, no government or NGO can actually solve them alone. And so we need forums like the CGF, where the private sector can demonstrate the power of collective action in finding solutions. We believe that what we are able to demonstrate is that through working together, we can address some of the really significant climate, nature and health concerns, but while also improving and strengthening business. And businesses can only thrive alongside thriving communities and a healthy environment. So what we're really about is creating that win-win situation. Our coalitions of action, how we operate, include those focused on food waste, on healthier lives. We work around supporting forest positive, human rights and plastic waste. And these coalitions are really all testament to how shared knowledge can drive industry transformation. So I'll focus briefly on two of our coalitions, looking at food waste and looking at healthier lives, the most relevant to the discussions today. And we know, and we have a shared understanding, and some of the speakers have already mentioned this morning, how food waste is a huge issue, a monumental issue. We know that 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted. That not only is a tragedy, but it contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. And at a time when we've heard already the significant problems of 1 in 9 people across the globe going hungry, it shouldn't be allowed to continue to happen. So the CGF's Food Waste Coalition are spearheading efforts to halve global food loss by 2030 in alignment with SDG 12.3. We have industry leadership, we have clear commitments, and we're using innovative methods to drive momentum to cut food waste across the supply chain. So, for example, our members meet regularly to share their knowledge, to learn from one another. We work, as I mentioned, across the whole supply chain. And in 2023, our members work directly with growers, with smaller farmers, to develop a methodology for sampling and measuring food loss that occurs post-harvest on the farm. We worked in partnership with the WWF, and this initiative gives both the voice and the power to the farmers and the growers, because in helping them to understand where the food loss is occurring, we can help them then find ways and take actions with their buyers to valorize the whole crop, to make the most of what they're actually growing. And at the other end of the spectrum, we also know that up to 70% of food is wasted once it leaves the store. These numbers are huge. We need to also support and help consumers by giving them the knowledge, the skills, and the understanding that food waste in the home is so significant, and to help them prevent food waste is another key area of collaboration for us. So as a coalition, our members last year launched a shared campaign, a media campaign called #TooGoodToWaste. And the campaign aimed throughout many regions across the globe to support consumers to reduce food waste in the home. So I'll turn now to another really key issue for us, which is supporting people to live healthier lives. And it's true that today we face a really dramatic paradox. We have hunger, significant hunger persisting in Europe, alongside alarming rates of obesity. And we know that we believe that consumer goods companies can play a very vital role in inspiring healthier and more sustainable food choices, both amongst consumers and amongst employees. We aim to provide clear information, support product innovations, to empower consumers to make informed decisions that align with their health and with the environment. So, for example, our Workforce Nutrition Alliance have set a goal to reach 3 million employees by 2025 and 10 million by 2023. And so far, we've reached 2,055 million consumers through our test and learn programs in store and online to support them to make healthier choices. These programs span the globe. We work from China to the UAE to Colombia, and our reach continues to grow. And we develop really practical tools such as playbooks that develop this blueprint for success that we can share more broadly. So those are just some examples of the work that we've been doing. And as I said, my concluding remarks that the private sector has a really and can play a very transformative role in building a sustainable food system throughout Europe and throughout Central Asia. We need to collaborate, we need to innovate, and we need to have a commitment to shared goals so that we can create a future where people, planet, and businesses all flourish. Thank you.
Thank you so much also for highlighting the need for a win-win situation and identifying some of the key areas of work, including food waste and the health slides. This concludes this panel. Thank you so much to all the speakers for very insightful and concise messaging. Now we move to second round where Dr. Radix Cornelia, Director of the WMO Office for Europe, will moderate. Over to you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and distinguished colleagues. It is my great pleasure to be here today with you together and to moderate this session. And also it is my pleasure to represent the issue-based coalition on sustainable food systems event today. As we are running behind the agenda, I will try to keep my introductory words as short as it is possible, but I would like to mention, I strongly believe our gathering is not only timely, but also imperative. Let me provide you the reason why it is so. The food system have a unique relationship with the climate change. I think everybody knows it in the room. Why it is among the most vulnerable sector in the economy to a changing climate, agriculture and food production itself substantially contribute to climate change. Allow me to emphasize also that this nexus between food and climate, the topic that resonates deeply in our discussion today has been underscored by the UN Secretary General himself. His call to action urges us to align national strategies and plans of climate and food systems, recognizing the interdependence of these crucial domains. It is clear, I think, that our region, my region, Europe and Central Asia, is experiencing severe impacts on and off food systems on climate, which reinforce the urgency of our collaborative actions. The issue-based coalition on sustainable food systems stands at the forefront of this challenge. The main objective of this coalition is to support countries to make food system more sustainable and to achieve the 2030 agenda and its goals. Our commitments extend beyond rhetoric to concrete action. The envision a holistic approach, a multi-stakeholder view that embraces the diversity of perspectives needed for the comprehensive solution. Before we proceed, let us take one more moment to acknowledge the milestone that has significantly shaped our agenda today, the Emirates Declaration, a landmark initiative. The acknowledgement of this symbiotic connection between food, climate, and biodiversity in the Emirates Declaration has propelled us towards a more integrated and comprehensive approach. Looking ahead, as Sylvia mentioned earlier, the upcoming COP29 takes place in November 2024 in Azerbaijan presents a unique opportunity, I believe, for the global community to further solidify our commitment to sustainable food systems and climate action. Let's discover more with our first speaker, Mr. David Nabarro. Mr. Nabarro is the Strategic Director of the RFSD Foundation and Co-Director of the Institute of Global Health Innovation at Imperial College London. David secured his medical qualification in 1974 with assignment in over 50 countries. He has worked in communities and hospitals, governments, civil society, universities, and in the United Nations programs. I would like to highlight that in October 2018, David received the World Food Prize together with Lawrence Haddad for their leadership in raising the profile and building coalition for action for better nutrition across the SDGs. So David, what are some opportunities and challenges of the UAE Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems and Climate Action for Europe?
Thank you, Dr. Cornelia. Good morning, everybody. It's 28 years that the world's nations have come together to negotiate climate action. And for the first time in those 28 years, in Dubai in December, food suddenly appeared on the table it was dramatic. I've been working with successive United Nations Secretary Generals, 3 of them, with a particular focus on trying to converge food and climate in the international discourse. It's very difficult. And I've participated since 2014 in global efforts to find some way to bring these 2 juggernauts together. But it's hard. And we've already heard from colleagues, in a way, why it's hard. It's a kind of existential battle. People working on climate say, we've got enough challenges to deal with as they stand trying to get greenhouse gas emissions from energy reduced to a manageable level. Now you're trying to bring in all this food stuff, and it's complex because food does 2 things. It contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, but as you've just heard, food systems everywhere are being undermined by climate change. So getting a declaration that the United Arab Emirates government was prepared to share with other countries was one thing, and for that we must admire the leadership of Mariam Al-Mary, the former Minister of Water and Food Security in UAE. But the other thing is that once that declaration came out and was circulated in October last year, to get 159 world nations endorsing it at the head of state level is pretty remarkable. It's as though the fact that climate change has been accelerating in recent years has alerted and woken up numerous governments to the reality that they've got to try to sort out the relationships between food and climate. Let's take Sierra Leone as an example. There, the president, new president, newly elected, said, I'm bringing a senior person into my office to preside over a new unit that looks at the interplay between food and energy and climate and nature. Because if we don't do that, it's going to affect the long-term development of our country. Now, as a result of this 159 country endorsed declaration, the focus now at country level is we know what needs to happen, but how do you actually make that happen, given that the issues are often contested, and as again we've heard this morning, there is frequently protest and sometimes real blockage of change. And the answer is we all have to work on trying to converge the interests that exist in agricultural production, in food, in nutrition, water, health, climate, biodiversity, equity of livelihoods, women's rights, and the future for young people. It's a really complex multiplay of different sectoral interests, stakeholder interests that need to be brought together. And that's why the UN Food System Coordination Hub and the team that I work with in 4SD Foundation are going to steadfastly focus on working with the national food systems conveners as they build convergence teams at country level, reaching across to the environment sector, the health sector, the sectors concerned with social protection and others, simply to focus on how to get better convergence without getting locked into disputes and conflict, and in a way that gets the different interests, particularly the farmers, but also the food companies, also the consumer groups, particularly around nutrition and health, that get everybody working together. And so that's what we've been focusing on yesterday. You heard Jiri Olila summarize that this is something conveners are really keen on, and we will be giving that full attention with the UAE, not just through to the next COP29 in Baku in Azerbaijan, but actually through to COP30, which up till now is due to take place in Belém in Pará state in Brazil. So watch this space, really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for this remarkable sense of linking arms and linking hearts and working together on a really challenging but vital agenda for the future. Again, Dr. Cornelia, thank you. Really beautiful meeting. Back to you.
Thank you. very much summarizing us the history and the milestones of the last 28 years, as you mentioned, and highlight the importance of the declaration. But let's turn now to hear more about what countries are doing. We have with us today Ms. Lian Martin. She is the head of the Public Policy Coordination and European Integration Department at the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry in Moldova. She is closely working for the food system transformation and was very actively involved during last year's Stocktaking Moment in Rome. So, Lilian, what are the successful examples of multi-stakeholder collaboration resulting in coordinated actions leading to food systems transformation and impactful climate action?
Thank you, dear moderator, for very important and I think as a base for a very good coordination moment within the countries that are taking care to implement and to run the food systems system implementation pathways. Of course, for us, for all of us, for national conveners, I think it's very important to find the best ways of the coordination. What does this mean? First, I think all of us should have some main characteristics from a leader, from a person that could convene, and of course to gather the main stakeholders together and to solve or to find the solutions for the implementation of the best actions that should be taken in order to converge the food systems, the transformation with the climate actions. Of course, our common goal on alignment and convergence of food system can be a success if all actors have the feeling to be included in their input and what is valued. Let me give an example about the citizen initiative reaching to divide farmers, including organic farmers and NGOs, focusing on the nature and how best to protect bees. I'm giving an example from our association that is taking care about the apiculture sector. While everyone expected to end badly, it proved the opposite actually. Both sides found a compromise, which was on the one hand acceptable for NGOs, but also, and more importantly, had the support of farming community. Rather than obligation and fixed targets, this example shows that what needs to get success: first, cooperation and acceptance, and second, recognizing that there is rarely a single correct solution to any problem. To conclude, no doubt that we are facing challenging times around the world, but working together, connecting with each other, it is of paramount importance to achieve our common goals. In order to achieve the targeted results, public and private sector, the actors must act collectively to override these challenges and seize new opportunities. So now I'd like to say some words about the challenges that we are facing, at least in my country. From our perspective, it would be, of course, of a great support to have more time. What does it mean, more time? I mean this more people to be engaged in all these processes, because we actually are lacking the personnel. Unfortunately, this is a huge problem in all our line ministries. Also, at the same time, taking into account that Moldova now is in the process of on our path to EU integration, we have many other priorities, of course. Besides that, to transform the food systems and different other strategies related to these activities. That's why also it's a challenge to combine all these priorities and to go on with all these needed actions. One more issue could be the lack of experience in the strategic coordination of needed actions. And maybe it's a less or not so much interest from the private sector, consumers, producers, and more or less from the civil society. In this sense, I think we should increase the awareness and to make them to understand that the importance of working together and joining or going to one to the common goal is as important as to have success and not just on the national level, but on the highest level, I mean globally. I think I will end on this note and thank you for your attention. Any question, I am pleased to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. Thank you for providing us with your national perspective and highlighting the importance of cooperation. Finally, I'm pleased that we have a youth representative with us today, Alexis Belleman. Alexis is a climate youth delegate in Switzerland. This mandate was created as a follow-up to global efforts to involve youth in the UN climate negotiations. He has a great passion for social entrepreneurship, sustainability, circular economy, and biomimetics. So, Alexis, how can youth actively contribute to fostering transformative changes in food systems at national and regional level? What mechanisms should be established to facilitate the active involvement of youth in these efforts?
Thank you, Dr. Cornelia. Thank you to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to represent the voice of the youth. And I want to start my small intervention by acknowledging first the privilege I have to be here and to have a daily life where I can eat, where I have healthy food, and I have a roof, which is not the case for everyone right now in the world. Now, as we heard from many of you, COP28 was a major success in terms of putting food system in the agenda, but we should also remember that in terms of negotiation, we're still behind the schedule and that we need more ambition. And we, as Swiss youth delegates, but also as younger members, we will push at SB60 for a clear roadmap, for clear workshop topics, and also an understanding of the food system perspective. Now, I was very happy hearing that Mr. Kopse and Mrs. Ekra and other people in the room mentioned this very important need of policy coherence and multi-stakeholder engagements and participatory implementation, because this is actually what we need, Dr. Cornelia, in terms of youth involvement. We are here, we are more ready to help. We are more ready to take action, but we lack organizational structure. We lack strategic implementation channels, and we also lack financial support. So concretely, what does this mean for you? Decision makers, diplomats, policy coordinators, managers, to help us youth to be more involved and to actively contribute to food system change. I will give you 5 ways to do so. The first one is to create youth advisory boards or youth council. I'm glad and very honored to say that I'm part of the OECD Youth Advisory Board. And this is a very good way to give power to the youth and to make them on the same level as the decision makers. So it is about a meaningful youth engagement, collaborative process, and to share the power of decision between decision maker and youth. This is the first one. The second one is to have consultation with youth organizations such as NGOs and associations and to integrate them at a high level. Why? Because we want to have a two-way communication. We don't want to be heard or to be decorated. That's amazing. That's the first step. But the second one is to be considered and that our interests have been implemented. So this is also very important. And I know the UN is working hard on this. Also, the FAO, I was happy to be part of the World Forum last fall, where I can see this exchange between decision makers and youth organization. And for example, tomorrow I will meet the head of my delegation, Mr. Felix Wertley, to ask him whether my successor could have more power in terms of inclusion in the decision taken by my delegation at the UN. The third thing would be the recognition and valuation of the voluntary work, because a lot of youth that I'm representing today are doing this in their free time. They're not getting paid for this. So we need to find a way to make free voluntary work recognized as valuable among all the countries of the UN. Maybe first nationally, that's what the Swiss Youth Council is pushing for at the parliament, and I'm also pushing for this, but this is very crucial in order to balance better the engagement of the youth toward a more sustainable future. And the second last one, or maybe the last one actually, would be, let me first say the second last one, free capacity and skills building. I think that we are all very knowledgeable in this room. We are all passionate about the problems, and so are the youth. But sometimes they don't lack knowledge, they lack skills. How to implement knowledge, how to do lobbying, how to manage your emotions, how to communicate with media. All those things are shaping the narrative of the youth discussion and integration. So I think we also need here a lot of support, strategic support. And the last one is a support for emotion and mental health. Because I'm speaking of experience, going to COP as a young negotiator is not an easy task. Being in this overwhelming environment and being under pressure, not knowing how to deal with your emotions. So I think if we want to preserve the commitment of the youth, we need to help them also to deal with it better in terms of emotions. So finally, I want to conclude with a very concrete example. I'm working on a book as a climate youth delegate to educate Swiss youth on the nexus and the link between food, health, and climate. And I want to promote it to every school in Switzerland. That's my task. However, the budget that was given to me for doing this, paying my graphic designer and promoting my book was 600 francs. So you can imagine that by having critical limited resources, limited time, voluntary work, we could not compete with other stakeholders that do this for a job, right? So to conclude, we need more financial support, because without money, we cannot achieve great things. We need more exposure and visibility. We need to change the narrative, the media exposure, and we need collective power. Why? Because youth suffering a double injustice. We are the less representative, but the most impacted. And we all hope for a better world. So thank you so much for your time, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was my great pleasure to hear the voice of the youth and your request of clear roadmap and strategic implementation, and also your proposal, how we can support you, how we can have the youth on board, and how we can engage youth for a more sustainable future. So thank you very much. I think the message is well received, but as we are running behind the so I will leave the floor back to Sylvia to wrap up and close the session.
Thank you very much, Cornelia, for a great moderation, for a great panel, and thanks to Alexi for reminding us that the youth contribution should not be free labor. And trust us, we also have challenges managing our emotions. We are in the middle of negotiations. It's not just the youth. But thank you so much, and really brilliant intervention on your side, and very inspiring for all of us. I think we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be very brief. Quick things that I've taken away from this meeting. There is still some unfinished business that we have to work on. I think at the Stocktaking Moment, we tried to take the unfinished business from the summit, but as Francesco reminded us, there is still some unfinished business on nutrition, on resilience, and so many things. And it is now that we have to start laying the ground to make sure that we reduce those gaps, and that in 2025, we get away with less things to put on the table, because we would have addressed a little bit more of those unfinished areas. I think another point is really being courageous in managing the trade-offs and in trying to find new solutions. And the way to do that is really to work in a whole of society efforts. And we've had examples from Switzerland, we've had examples from Moldova about how we can reduce the anxiety, how we can really bring all the stakeholders with us, especially the farmers, by anticipating, by organizing dialogues, and really creating space for acceptance that comes from building trust. I think it was our colleague from the EIT who mentioned that. Last point is really in terms of how we work together and the fact that we need more coordination. We need to make sure that we position ourselves where we bring value and not where it's comfortable or where it's our traditional area or we've been doing it for the past 10 years, so we are doing it. We should go where there is value addition. We should try to scale. We cannot change things with piecemeal approaches and small projects. And really, I think working together so that we are stacking what we are contributing each of us. And I think our colleagues from the private sector, but also from the science community, have really provided a lot of examples of how we can do things better together. And we're looking forward to coordinating and partnering much more with them in the next 2 years. So I know all of us want to run to the plenary, so I'll stop there. Thank you so much again, and looking forward to staying engaged and to a very, very productive and dynamic path to 2025. Thank you.